Hey, what's up everybody? BDO44 coming at you another video. Alright, so I'm stepping out since the pest control came in, sprayed a little bit. He told me I didn't have to stay out for a full hour, maybe about 30 minutes. So I figured I'd just go make my runs. My normal runs down to get various different things that I love to get. But we're talking basketball nowadays, man. Back in the action in regards to my passions, because it's been a lot of going on in the NBA. Of course, Dame Lillard was just traded to the Bucks, and now we're expecting for more trades to come that shake out from that trade. Of course, Jrue Holiday is on the move, from what I understand. We've talked about that at length. I made a video also thinking about a player that hasn't necessarily been rumored to be in trade, but is set up quite nicely to basically be coveted at $9 million expiring, a guy by the name of Nicholas Claxton from the Brooklyn Nets. Now, they drafted his predecessor, and I'm wondering if the Brooklyn Nets would be willing to move on from him for a pretty solid price, since they don't want to pay him. A team like the Golden State Warriors, team like the LA Clippers, various different teams that need a center, you'd probably be best to try to put yourself in a position to try to acquire this player. Not only because he is a center and you need one, but because he's looking to get paid. And a lot of guys who are looking to get paid often play very, very well to start the season. We saw it with Miles Bridges before he got in a little trouble. He came out and had almost an all-star season. He probably should have been an all-star about 3 years ago. Because Michael Jordan ultimately was hesitant to pay him that year, he came out and played his best basketball. We're seeing it in football as well. The Buccaneers and Mike Evans. The Bucs came out and said they weren't going to pay him, and all of a sudden he's been playing fantastic for my fantasy team. So this is just a trend that I tend to see. When teams basically commit to not paying guys, they come out and try to more or less audition themselves for the league and often play great ball for you. So even if you're not the team that necessarily wants to pay him rather, he's gonna do the same thing for you if you go acquire him right now. So that's something I've been thinking about, made a video about that, etc. And I think teams should really consider. Also, as I look around, I just realized that there are a lot of young talent from the draft that just came out, that was just drafted rather, and I think that some of them are either going to ascend or descend in value to no fault of their own, just based on the circumstance they're in. While there are certain teams that don't hardly have what it is that they need to be as good as they think they're going to be. Cleveland Cavaliers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Golden State Warriors, the LA Clippers. These are teams that pride themselves on being contenders, but if you look at the back of their benches and you look at their asset class, they don't have as much as some of the other teams that are in smaller markets that no one's thinking about, like the Pacers and the Hornets and various different teams that I can consider, who just have a whole lot of assets, just nobody knows they have them, or just don't expect anything from them because a lot of those guys haven't started the season to show exactly how good they drafted. Charlotte drafted really well. The Pacers drafted really well. And they may not have the ability to showcase all these young guys. They may have log jams at their position, so their value is just going to go down to no fault of their own. If you're one of these teams like Miami, for example, you got fantastic locales. Your location is great. The problem is your asset class is not. You know, with Clippers, you guys got to go ahead and try to find ways to acquire these youngsters off of these teams. Now, I don't know how you're going to do it, because I said you guys don't have as much as maybe one would think. But if you can package some picks to get these guys, bring them to your team, and put them in the roles that you ultimately can showcase them for, you can then retrade them 2 years from now for the same picks that you do not have, or keep those guys as part of your future and be excited about what it is they can do. It's the only way to move in the NBA, especially if you're one of these big market teams that don't have big market assets, which a lot of you don't. So that's what comes to mind for me. You know, if I'm the Miami Heat, I'm going to take my second round picks and I'm going to give them to Charlotte, and I'm going to get Nick Smith. I'm going to get, Amari Bailey. And maybe you don't want to necessarily give up picks, but again, those guys are going to play twice as much for you as they would have if they stay in the situation they're in, because those situations aren't going to be able to showcase them for who they're supposed to be. And ultimately, they're going to get rocked to sleep by just the fact that they're not going to ultimately have those minutes. Rocked to sleep meaning they fall into career role guys. Maybe they don't develop properly. Maybe their workout habits turn into role guy workout habits instead of starter workout habits, and they never actually become what it is they're supposed to be. I've seen it happen too many times, and it doesn't have to. You know what I mean? I look at a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're hoarding a lot of talent, but they don't have but 48 minutes to play these guys. They only have 5 players to play at a time. You got all these lottery guys that ultimately can't turn into what it is that you drafted them to be. So how valuable do they ultimately become in the grand scheme of things? Not very. So a lot of it doesn't really actually translate to you having a lot of assets in the long run if these first round picks turn into career role guys and second round guys, et cetera, turn into nothing. So this is what I'm saying. Some of these teams need to identify where they're going wrong and nip it in the bud at the root. This is what I tried to get my Lakers to understand years ago. We got it. We understand it, and we're doing things properly, and I couldn't be more proud of us. Couldn't be more happy with us. And it's because we abandoned the idea that flexibility can be abandoned and started taking it more seriously. We started understanding that young talent and undrafted talent is really where the money's at. Because at the end of the day, if you can find something out of nothing, guess what you have? Exactly what you need to make trades for the guys that you ultimately are rumored to want. The Miami Heat have been embarrassed time and time again with all different types of players trying to go to their place. KD, Dame, they could have had a super team and not lost Jimmy, not lost Bam either. But because they didn't have the assets around Jimmy and Bam that was valuable enough to make a real trade, they weren't able to get any of these guys. Everybody wants to live in Miami. Everybody wants to play with Jimmy. But nobody can get there because you can't sign there outright. And you certainly can't get traded there because they don't have nothing that the teams these guys are on actually want. This is how you do it. You find the dudes that are in logjam situations. You give up the little second round picks that you have and whatever you can scrounge together to get these dudes. You bring them to your situation since you are Miami and Miami culture, and you ultimately put them in positions to be who it is that you ultimately have the role for them to be, as to which their natural teams don't. After all, that's all it really is a lot of these teams have mortgaged their future for random superstars at a random moment. And now you have a logjam in those places where this is taking place. You just need to get back what is rightfully yours. That's all that needs to happen in the NBA. So you look at what the Minnesota Timberwolves just did, trading away Rudy Gobert for getting Rudy Gobert, rather, for God knows everything in the world Utah could possibly receive from him. And as a result, the Minnesota Timberwolves are in a position to where they could use Jrue Holiday and probably don't have the picks and the assets to get him. They do not. And you think they're going to be able to retrade Rudy Gobert for what they got him for? Of course not. He wasn't worth that when they did this. So now they're in a situation where, by way of doing that, not only did they ruin themselves, but they ruin these players' circumstances, because now you got players being drafted to these places that are ultimately in logjam because of that decision. What needs to happen is the balance needs to be restored somehow. And how do you do that? By naturally, individually taking second round picks, 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, and not giving them away for Jay Crowder or some of these old agent clients that have been in the league for 100 years and you still want to use them. These Markieff Morris types do. No, enough of that. Trade them for the second year guys, for the rookies that ultimately should have already been in your team if you didn't mortgage your future. You know what I mean? Get your G League team going. If you don't quite like what you see from some of these guys, send them to that G League and let them sit there for a couple of years. Bring them to your road. Bring them up to your big club 2 years from now. Play them 20 minutes when somebody gets inevitably hurt. And then trade them at the deadline for what it is that they're going to be worth. Get back whatever it is you can for them. Rinse and repeat. This is how you have to do it, because a lot of these teams, they have mortgaged their entire future. And then as a result, they don't have roles for these players, or rather they do have the roles, but they don't have the players. You see what I'm saying? And then these players end up in places where they don't have roles because they overwhelm themselves with all of the stuff that's been given to them basically for free. But that's what the league is made up of right now. It looks like teams like Charlotte, Charlotte has like 7 or 8 point guards that all can go, and then have paid LaMelo Ball, and that's their future. How does a guy like Nick Smith ever get off the ground? How does a guy like Amari Bailey ever get off the ground? James Bouknight ever get off the ground? Well, the reality is, all 3 of them dudes should be Miami, Clippers, you know what I'm saying? Golden State. These are where these people are supposed to be. Because these teams have mortgaged their future or found a way to give away stuff for half the price. And ultimately, those are the roles that these players need to be in. And so as I canvas the league and I look around, I'm drafting all of my fantasy basketball teams, and I realize so many good players are in such bad situations. I know why. It is because they've done this. It's because they put themselves in a position to not have the assets, which translates to them having no roles ultimately that are ultimately supposed to be there. So as a result, I'm looking at Milwaukee. They're starting their season possibly with Pat Connaughton being their starting shooting guard. Are we crazy? When Nick Smith can't get on the floor? When Davion Mitchell can't get on the floor? Think about this. That doesn't make any sense. I've been saying to you guys that I think the NBA needs to expand. But no, the NBA just needs to recalibrate the talent that's been overflowed into certain teams that have done these good deals, also known as bad deals on the other end. Teams like the Clippers, they starting guys that are 106 years old. Golden State signing who? Who did you just sign? Rudy Gay? Rudy Gay's like my age, fam. And he was a role player ever since he was in his since he had a knee injury back in Memphis. He's been a role player ever since. So how in the world is he somebody you're actually coveting? When I can look all over the league and see guys that don't even have opportunities who are 3 and 4 times more capable than him at this point. That's all it is. The NBA needs to figure out how to get these assets back from teams that ultimately can't use them any damn way. Because yeah, if I'm OKC, I want a bunch of first round picks, but guess what ends up happening? They turn into nothing. Why? Because I can't play them. A guy like Cason Wallace, you think Cason Wallace shouldn't be starting at the shooting guard position for the Bucks? Are you kidding me? It's a perfect role for him. Everybody would be happy. But because these dumb deals have been made well before he got into the league, and because teams have given away stuff for free, and other teams have been fleecing teams, it didn't help the teams that did the fleecing either. Why? Because you don't have the roles to play these dudes. You don't have the players to put, you ultimately don't have the roles. You need to send them to places where the roles are there, so the league can have more parity. Greed hurts both sides. Stupidity hurts both sides. And that's what the name of the game in the NBA is. You can keep expanding teams. You can get 3-4 more teams, but it's still going to be a bunch of log jams because it's going to be the smart teams taking everything in trade and the dumb teams running around with the Pat Connaughton starting. No disrespect to Pat Connaughton, NBA champion. But come on, fam. What are we doing? This is what it comes down to. Guys being overvalued, traded for twice what they're worth, and then when that happens, both sides get hurt because they don't have the role. So that's what I'm seeing in the NBA, man. It just needs to be a recalibration of everything. Recalibration of everything. All these teams that are in situations where they've gotten 176 first-round picks for Joe Nobody because some team thought he was still good and he not. It just ruined the whole league, man. You got some of the best players in the world not getting off the good starts as rookies, turning into career role guys because of this conundrum. And it doesn't help anybody. It don't help nobody at all. And they listen to the media, and they're none the wiser because they don't actually know anything about all this because they don't pay attention to this type of stuff as closely as they need to. So they spew this nonsense out to the masses. The masses then reflect what it is that they want onto the GMs, and the GMs end up getting stuff to themselves that they shouldn't have based on the media being misunderstanding what actually is good and what's not. So it's like I'm seeing GMs bringing themselves names. It's just like, yo, that name ain't nothing. He's nobody no more. No disrespect to anybody. But he can't help you. What you need is someone who can. And because you can get somebody who can, in a way, with these second round picks and various different trades that just need to be done right, you can ultimately have the roles for these players that are stuck in these bad situations and can't do a dang thing for themselves, not making the money they ultimately should be making, and all kinds of different stuff that this trickles down to. Guys wanting to go places they can't get to. This dang Lillard situation is embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. The man wanted to go to Milwaukee. He wanted to go to Miami, ended up in Milwaukee. And you know why? It's because Miami's one of them teams that didn't do right with their assets. That's it. And some of them players that are in these places like Charlotte, in these places like just overloaded in talent, OKC, they need to be in Miami getting traded for Dame. See how that all connects? So I'm where I need to be right now. Of course, I'll give you more content as I come out. Video 44. I thank you all for watching.